Hey, everybody. I'm Alex Alcorn, and I am currently in Charlotte, North Carolina. I was on Pocosito 2019, so with a few other folks on the call. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right, so today I'm presenting about Carolina Farm Trust, which is the organization I'm currently with. But first, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. So I wear a lot of hats and do a lot of different kinds of work in the community. I'm sort of a public health and public policy professional by training, but I consider myself a community organizer and do a lot of work around sustainability and resilience broadly in communities in our area. Some with sustainability and environmental issues, but also sort of social sustainability. So, and social resilience. Currently, I'm the Director of Marketing and Communications at Carolina Farm Trust. I'm in a full-time role for another week there, and then taking on a role in development with a arts and cultural institution starting next week, and I'll be doing both. So I'm fortunate and grateful to have opportunity in abundance right now, but I'm also a little bit, apprehensive about everything coming on my plate. So I love the work I'm doing with Carolina Farm Trust. All right, so the organization, I just joined in May. I'm fairly new to it. It was founded in 2015, and we're headquartered in Charlotte, North Carolina, on unceded Catawba lands. I included a map here to show some folks who might not be familiar with the region where we're located and the region that we serve. Currently, because we're fairly young, we have the strongest presence in the Charlotte area. So you'll see Charlotte is right here in southern, sort of southwestern North Carolina, right on the border of South Carolina. We're located in the Piedmont region of the Carolinas. And our sort of goal is to someday really serve the Carolinas region more broadly. So our vision at Carolina Farm Trust is to feed the Carolinas with healthy food from local farms. And our mission is to strengthen local food systems in the Carolinas from production to consumption. So foundational to the work that we do and what we believe is that all people have a right to healthy, sufficient, and culturally appropriate food, that relationships between land and people matter, and that food systems must provide equitable opportunities. Particularly important to our work currently with the national dialogue around racial justice is making sure that we continue to challenge our own biases as individuals on staff and as an organization around racial equity, and make sure that we're framing all of our work with a racial equity lens. So what we're really trying to do is in strengthen, I said earlier that our mission is to really strengthen local food systems. And so we're doing this sort of system-wide work. So a lot of the work that we do is connecting stakeholders in local food systems in the region, whether they be landowners, growers and farmers, small agribusinesses, organizational partners, or consumers. And so within that broad work of connecting different stakeholders in the system, we sort of have three buckets of work that we focus on. One is protecting land for farming through our land trust. The second is supporting small farmers and growers. And the third is operating a network of urban farms. So first I wanted to talk about land preservation, because I think especially right now with a lot of conversations centering around land use and land ownership and the racial inequities within the systems and sort of structures of land use and ownership, we really think a lot about this and how we can best facilitate social and racial equity within these systems. And so the benefits of sort of us having land in Carolina Farm Trust system is that it really reduces the risk and helps create opportunities for farmers. I'm not going to get too much during this presentation into the challenges of local food systems, but I'm happy to send more information to anyone who wants to know more about the challenges that farmers face or the challenges faced by agribusinesses. But one thing, one important part of land preservation is that us sort of having land in the trust reduces risk for the landowners and for the farmers, because we're managing relationships and sort of contracts between small farmers and landowners. And so that guarantees some sort of steady use of the land for the landowner. And then the farmer usually signs, we try to sign a minimum of a 10-year lease with farmers. And so what farmers who might be working outside of a trust would typically run into is potential instability in the length term of a lease and the risk that a landowner might sell the land while they're on it. And so in working with Carolina Farm Trust, we help take some of that instability out of that relationship. And then the land preservation relationship also reduces costs for farmers, because we carry the cost of insurance on the land. And that's a pretty big cost for small farmers. And if anyone knows small farmers, they or have worked with them in the past, you probably know that starting a farming or agricultural operation is really expensive. And so farmers are really looking for any way to reduce those startup costs. And then it helps provide opportunity for farmers, making land more easily accessible and available to them. Okay, so our recent COVID response is a really good example of how we support local farmers. So we support local farmers by connecting them to other stakeholders in the system. So one example that of this work during COVID is our Stone Soup promo. You'll see the photo in the middle are these jars of soup. So what we did for that is we worked with around 10 to 12 local farms in the Charlotte region, sourcing everything that went into that soup, whether it was the grains, the meat, the vegetables, the herbs. And for every jar of soup that's sold, it funds a jar of soup for a family experiencing food instability. And so in that project, we were really creating sort of a steady source of revenue for the small farmers that were involved, in that we bought these ingredients in bulk from them and then are turning that into a product that consumers can sell that also gives back to community. Another thing that we've been working on during COVID is baby food distribution. So there's a local farm nearby that makes organically, sort of locally produced baby food. And they, I think, generally are having a hard time scaling up their business, just because the local food system is so competitive, especially when they're trying to compete against big, sort of large businesses and corporations. And so we purchased 3,000 units of baby food from them using a grant that we got, and we distributed that to on-the-ground partners who are serving food insecure families. So Carolina Farm Trust wasn't out directly giving those baby food units to families, but we were working with our Latin American Chamber of Commerce, with our a couple of LGBTQ nonprofits and other food banks that are serving people experiencing food insecurity. And so we're really just connecting, again, this small sort of agribusiness to organizational partners that are doing food distribution. And then we've connected farmers directly to food banks. And so the picture on the left is a U-Haul truck that we rented, and you'll see coolers that are packed with local meat and boxes that have local produce. So we picked up all of that food from local farms in the region, and then we delivered it to places like in the photo you see on the right, where we pulled up in sort of a senior housing complex, where a lot of the seniors living there are living on limited income. And we unloaded all of those boxes of produce, and people were coming by with tote bags that they could fill with local produce. And so one really great thing about this is that we've heard a lot of feedback that folks like this who are experiencing food insecurity, if they go to a food bank, they might typically get food that's leftover, sort of unwanted produce or nearly spoiled produce from a grocery market or another place that is diverting their waste. And so the quality of the food that we're moving from farms directly to these different organizations is much higher. And so the people ultimately are getting a food source that's more nutritious and that just all around is a lot better and really honors sort of their, we really believe that everyone deserves access to high quality food. And this really speaks to that value. Okay, so I have two examples of different urban farms that are sort of under our umbrella, and we kind of have two models. The first one is this Milgrove Farm Co-op, which is 11 acres in Union County, which is a rural county just east of Charlotte. Charlotte is in Mecklenburg County, so it's the neighboring county to the east. And on that site, we lease the land to 3 different agribusinesses who work in sort of a circular economy model on the site. So Nebede Farms is owned by Bernard Singleton, who's pictured in the lower right-hand corner, and he has a moringa project. So he harvests moringa, which is a really nutritious and beneficial plant that comes from South Asia, from India. And he grows a lot of other really sort of interesting crops that we don't typically see grown to scale here in the region. So he always does a lot of education around the cultural significance of those crops. So he's growing rice, he's growing indigo, and he also grows other things that he can sell to local restaurants like blueberries. And so in the upper left-hand corner, you see actually myself and a friend of mine who were helping him with a blueberry harvest about a month ago. So on the site, we've got Nebede Farms. Serendipity Flowers sells flowers for bouquets. And then Crown Town Compost is a local small compost business. And they are starting a black soldier larva fly or black soldier fly larvae sort of pilot or demo on the site and experimenting with some new technologies around how they're processing their compost. And so that's feeding into the growing that's being done on site, and then some of the waste from the farm and from the flower patches are going over to the compost area of the site. And then the second model of an urban farm that we have is exemplified here in the urban farm at Aldersgate, which is 6.7 acres on Charlotte's east side. It's in a neighborhood that has a lot of corner stores and a lot of small grocers, but not any full-scale grocery stores. And so a lot of folks are not spatially or geographically close to food, and we would typically call it, what we hear of as a food desert. And a lot of the folks in the area are low-income wage earners. And so one goal of this farm is really to improve access to nutritious and, really beautiful produce in that area of the city. And this model is a little bit different because Carolina Farm Trust, instead of leasing land to other agribusinesses, pays staff members to farm the site. And so we have currently we're going through a transition. We had a farm manager and farm manager assistant, and they both left the organization for different reasons. And so now we are bringing on a different pair, a couple who farms together, and they have a staff member. So they're going to be on site. And so on the left, you see some of the growing areas. And you see this was about a month ago, so things are already grown up a lot more. String beans, tomatoes, eggplant. In the middle is a photo of what's going to be our farm stand. So we sell the produce on site. We accept EBT and do a double up bucks program where we double the value of EBT dollars up to $20. And we work with the local government, with our county, on that program. And so folks are, that's a partner organization who's currently working on a renovation of the farm stand, which is an old pavilion. And then on the right, that's our first customer. So the farm's first harvest was actually in June of this year. So it's a young farm, and that customer came and purchased summer squash from us in June. So that was really fun and exciting to have our first sale. All right, so really quickly, I listed just some short-term outcomes of the work we do. Charlotte is experiencing exponential growth in terms of our population. one of the fastest growing cities in the country. And so we're facing a lot of development pressures, and that's not very different in any city, really. So I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with those pressures and what it means for communities. And so we're really focused on making sure that there is land left over for rural and urban farming. We're strengthening the supply and demand for local food. So making sure that farmers have a steady demand and that consumers have a steady supply of food from local farms and for local consumers. We connect local growers to on-the-ground distribution partners, both for-profit and nonprofit. And so we're also strengthening the business models of those other partners who are distributing food from these farms. We're improving access to nutritious foods and providing workforce opportunities. As I mentioned earlier, we have paid staff who earn a salary to work on our urban farms. And then long-term, we're really focused on preserving the long-term availability and affordability of land for farming and growing, on fostering the next generation of farmers, minimizing reliance on national and international sources of food, improving human health, mitigating climate change, and connecting communities. And so one conversation we're having a lot right now is around how growing and sourcing our food locally really reduces transportation of food, reduces carbon emissions, and how farming can be a carbon sink and reduce carbon in the atmosphere. So I have my contact information there for anyone who wants to reach out. Totally feel free. And then the different social media platforms that we have: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. So please connect with us and check out our website.
Excellent. Wonderful. Thank you, Alex. This is really, really amazing work. And when you said that in the beginning, that the food banks very often serving or handing out not so great quality foods, let's put it that way. I mean, I've seen it firsthand at a food bank where I was handing out food, and I felt bad in a sense because it was food that I would not want at home. And that's kind of, that's a tough situation. And it's really good to give people not just leftovers, but actually the best food that there is, freshly grown, organically grown food. That's really amazing. So wonderful. And I would love to come and visit. I can't say when this might be, but
we would love that. That would be awesome.
It's so weird. It's not that far away, but I think the one closest is Rachel at the moment, but not for long. So yeah, this is an amazing job, and I think it's really great that you're doing this in this very young organization still.
It's very exciting.
Yeah. So if there are questions and comments or feedback, also maybe we can exchange information across the Eastern Seaboard about urban farming with Floyd, and maybe we do a subgroup on urban farming very soon. And I have mostly questions about pest management, etc. This is a tough area here.
Yeah. So our farmers are really knowledgeable. They know everything there is to know about pest management, and I do not. But we've been lucky so far. I don't think it's been a huge problem, but our farmers are definitely using different planting techniques to from what I understand, and Floyd can probably even chime in on this one, but to co-plant things that'll detract different insects and attract the insects we want and things like that. So it's very complex, and I really appreciate the knowledge that local farmers and growers bring to that.
Great. Yeah, Floyd, if you want to say anything anytime, but if you're not in a room where you can speak right now, that's fine too.
Hey, no, my bad. Yeah, you wanted to do like a talk on urban farming or something like that?
Yeah, I think we could do that at some point. Yeah,
that'd be really cool. Yeah, that'd be really cool.
Let's do that.
Yeah, and the pest management, I hate that stuff. I'm not gonna lie. It's no fun. It's no fun. I mean, because I know, like, I try not to use any type of pesticides or anything like that. So anything we use is all natural. Sometimes you just gotta squish them. I'm serious, especially when it comes to the beetles. All you can do is just squish them sometimes. So I mean that it goes all the way from there to using like cayenne pepper to making like a water solution with cayenne or peppermint soap or something like that, or to kill them, and that's pretty simple too. So it could go from there to just having to squish them.
Yeah.
So one doesn't work, you just gotta get your hands a little dirty, but I mean, it's all good.
Great. Well, that's good. So there's reason for hope, and harvest time is coming up. So it's very interesting. You said your pictures were about a month old, Alex. So now you have abundance of everything.
Yeah, it's amazing week to week how it grows. I'm working from home. Actually, we were remote before COVID, so it hasn't really changed how we work. But obviously, the farmers are on site all the time, even during COVID. And yeah, I stop by about once a week to take photos and get things, capture images for social media, and everything just grows so quickly. It's really great.
Great. Yeah, if anybody has comments also maybe about not the growing part, there were also other aspects such as the land ownership and the, do you call it stewardship of the land, or does it have too much maybe negative associated meaning with it? I mean, that's kind of, yeah, I don't know how the language in that area is changing now too, because we have different views of that. It's interesting because I'm also in the Piedmont here, so it stretches up here, and it's kind of, it's an interesting region in a way because it's so stretched out. But yeah, and any feedback if you want to, Gwen, anything you want to say?
Well, I want to say that I love the land trust model. When you see land trust, I don't know anything about farming land trust, and it's the first time I've heard anything about farming land trust. So I think that's fabulous. It's just wonderful to see that model and how well it was thought out. A land trust is something that I want to start here in the urban area of Atlanta, but dealing with residential work. And so it just fired off a lot of things in my head that I've, been thinking about. My sister's a chef, retired from Clemson, and she has started her own freeze-dried food business. And so there's just seeing the mason jars with all the dried products in there. It's fascinating to me, and it just blew off a whole bunch of lights in my head. And I thought your presentation was fabulous. And what the organization is doing, in my mind, is diverse in so many ways, and really looking at circular economy and putting it into action. So thank you so much for sharing all of that.
Yeah, I can only agree that was really, it's amazing. And I think, what do you say about the land trust in an urban context? Long time ago, French researcher who I thought didn't know much about that, but he came up to me and he said, Max, all real value comes from land. And so like ownership or non-ownership, basically collective ownership of land, is really important in so many ways, because people are being excluded by not having access to land. They're being priced out. They're being pushed out, and basically they're being squeezed over and over again in every regard. And I think it's a kind of a self-defense idea to have such a land trust. It's phenomenal. So yeah, let's see if we can maybe push these models elsewhere. I think that's exciting.
Yeah. Another thing I'll add, Gwen, since you're particularly interested in this, is that, we've been thinking a lot about these, Zach, what you raised about ownership versus stewardship and all these questions, and they're really tied to these racial histories that we have. And so we're in this moment of really thinking through like how this model benefits as many people as possible, and with that racial equity lens. And one thing that is kind of neat about our model is that we have, for example, the Milgrove Farm Co-op is in Carolina Farm Trust sort of name. And we lease to the 3 different businesses. But once we lease to them, they can in turn lease out as well. So they, in effect, are sort of acting as like the manager of that parcel of land. And so if a farmer wants to make money instead of farming that land, they can then in turn lease it out and just have that money paid to them. So it's kind of, I'm still learning a lot, and I'm still trying to understand how legally this all works, but it's fascinating.
That's very interesting. I just want to share that I was having a conversation recently with close friends and family, and talking about the social perspective. And we were talking about land and farming, that anytime you see any images, you see white people farming. You do not see images of African Americans farming. And we were the farmers, period. And so that's really been flipped. And part of that is it shows the image and puts the image in your mind, especially for African Americans, that we don't do that. We didn't do that. And we brought a lot of culture with us from Africa and from the islands on our farming techniques. And, the same thing for indigenous people.
Right. Very good. Well, we're almost at the end of the time, but I think this is a very important topic. And of course, Floyd, you presented on this, was it 2 months ago?
Yes,
and
yes.
That was really, really impressive. The numbers you brought there, and it was mind opening, really. And now we are discussing it yet again. Shows you just how important the topic is.
Yes, I think it's the fundamental issue. That period is probably it's a very fundamental period, particularly in American history, and that transition to making Black farmers being really 1% of the farming population, or below 1%, or right at that 1%, and that was systematically and strategically done, So I mean, we're at this state, by design,
Right. We are coming to the end of the hour. I'm really sorry to cut it off here somehow. I want to thank all of you for joining us, for participating, for sharing